Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast. My name is Debbie from NDIS Property Australia, and this is the second episode of our monthly in-depth series, SDA Unlocked, where we delve into the supply and demand data for specialist disability accommodation in different areas around Australia. Today, I'm going to be talking about Parramatta in Sydney. We all know Parramatta. It has been the city of Parramatta for a very long time. I grew up in Sydney, so I always knew it as, really second only to the CBD of Sydney. A major area, a lot of infrastructure around there, a lot of population around there. It is currently undergoing a massive $20 billion infrastructure and development project. So that's going to be injecting, they forecast 70,000 new jobs. Developments will include the Parramatta Square renewal, the light rail system, and of course the nearby Westmead Health Precinct redevelopment. There's a new aquatic leisure centre, Sydney's Metro West Underground, and Innovation Quarter, which is part of the Western Sydney University. Just part of those projects that are taking place now and over the coming years. So we thought that this would be a really good area to focus on for our second in-depth episode, where I go over the supply and demand for SDA dwellings in Parramatta. So I will start with the demand. Now, Parramatta itself, the NDIA quarterly reports just came out last week, actually, for the period ending December 2022. And within that, the SA3 region encompasses Parramatta, North Rocks, Northmead, Rosehill, Toongabbie, Constitution Hill, Winston Hills, Pendle Hill, Girrawheen, Wentworthville and Westmead. So it's quite a significant area. At the moment, the overall NDIS participant population is expected to be around about 5,000 by the end of this year. Now, going back to our 6% of all NDIS participants potentially being eligible for SDA funding, we're looking at potentially 300 or 310 SDA-funded participants in the Parramatta area. Currently, there are 153, so about half that number. Of those 153, 113 are living in a SDA dwelling. 29 are living in an SDA dwelling, but they're seeking an alternative. 11 participants are not currently in any form of SDA and they are seeking a dwelling. So that's only 40 participants currently seeking a dwelling. And that's broken down into the majority being improved livability, 17, 10 are high physical support, just 1 looking for a robust home, and 7 fully accessible, as a few that we don't know what they're looking for. Now, of that demand, what we do know is that a lot of these people are going to be living in existing old-style group homes, the old-style disability institutional housing. When we actually break it down to the number of places that are currently available for those SDA participants to live in, 96 places are in group homes. So if we've got 100 and Total of 113 plus 29, 142 are living in a home. That means that 2/3 of them, roughly, are probably in the old style and potentially are going to be looking to move into a new build dwelling in the future. What is this telling us? That there are a lot of participants in the area, not many looking, and we know there's also quite a bit of supply, particularly in terms of places available. However, it is really 50% new build, 50% in existing SDAs. So I'll come back to the actual numbers of what we're potentially looking at moving forward for demand. But talk now about the supply. We've got a total number of enrolled dwellings in the Parramatta SA3 area, 66. 33 are existing, 33 are new build. Of those new builds, we have majority high physical support and some are improved livability. And the basic are obviously don't fall into that category. They, as I said, are the older style. They are attracting SDA funding at the basic level, which is a much lower income. And those residents will most likely move into or wish to move into a more suitable new build dwelling down the track. So out of that supply, we know that there are 158 places available for residents. And that's spread over the 1 resident, 2 resident, 3 resident, 4, 5 and 6+ resident homes. So 158 places, 153 SDA funded participants. So this might appear to indicate that we do actually have an oversupply of SDA dwellings in Parramatta. But as I just said before, 96 of those places are in those group homes, those basic existing category. So, and going a bit deeper into the stats, we know that there are 39 places in group homes in the entire Greater Sydney Parramatta region, of which the Parramatta SA3 is roughly 37% of the population, of the NDIS population. So if we look at 37% being the magic number, we can assume that only 14 places in group homes are in the new build category that are attracting these higher incomes from an investor's perspective. So it basically, what it comes down to is that we've got 80 or more SDA funded participants living in the older style basic homes who are likely going to need to move. So we currently got 40 people looking and a potential another 80. So we could say we've got about 120 people that are going to need a new build home in the future. This is, when I say in the future, this is based on current levels of SDA participation and NDIS participation. In that Parramatta SA3 area, when I said earlier that there was over 5,000 expected NDIS population, of which 300 could potentially be funded for SDA, that's only half. So if we do have those other 150 odd people become SDA funded, then of course we can assume there's a demand for an additional 87 odd dwellings. Now, when I compare participants or places to dwellings, I'm working on a figure of about 1.8 participants per dwelling as an average. And that's sort of the average we're currently sitting at Australia-wide of all dwellings of all build types. So without having any more in-depth data from the NDIA, this is really all we've got to work with. Now, again, going forward, if we look at the 10-year forecast, the NDIA has stated there are going to be possibly 1 million NDIS participants by 2032. That is going to potentially provide a demand for a further 160 odd dwellings. So 87 and 160, we're looking at another 240, 250 dwellings in the Parramatta SA3 area being required over the coming years. So that says to me there is a pretty good demand there. Now let's have a quick look at the pipeline in the Parramatta area. Now, unfortunately, the NDIA don't break down that pipeline data any more detailed than for the SA4 region. This is the statistical area regions that the Australian Bureau of Statistics work on. So that SA4 region, it's called Sydney Parramatta, that actually accounts for the SA3 areas of Auburn, Carlingford, Guildford, Merrylands and Parramatta. As I mentioned just a bit before, 37% of the NDI's population of that greater area live in Parramatta. So we can kind of make assumptions based on that 37% of what our pipeline data is. But in the greater area, we're looking at 124 pipeline dwellings. The majority are high physical support. The majority are also apartments. Broken down into pipeline places based on that 1.8 conversion factor. You've got 170 places, 134 of those are in high physical support, and you've got 121 units in the pipeline for places in units. So there is quite a bit going on there. 240 potentially required dwellings over the next 10 years, 124 dwellings in the pipeline. We could say we could still safely add another 50 to 100 dwellings in that Parramatta area. So we see that as good potential, even though the current NDI stats don't look so favourable for Parramatta. It does look like at first glance that there is a bit of an oversupply happening, but you do need to really take a longer term view of this and look ahead to see what is happening in the area. There is so much going into development in Parramatta. There is going to be a lot more funded participants in the future there. So if you are looking at doing an investment in an SDA dwelling in that Parramatta area, then at this point in time, I would say it's a pretty good location. Your demand is there. Of course, if you do want to find out more information on that, there are places you can go to, people you can speak to, being the providers, the care providers, the SDA providers, who, especially those working in the area, who are going to be able to give you more of a on-the-spot feel for what they see is the future demand. They have the actual clients who are going to be looking at these dwellings as their forever homes. So we always recommend speak to the providers, talk to them. They're the ones that really know what's happening on the ground. They're the ones that you need to be really talking to get that in-depth information. This is just an overview to give you a bit more of an understanding of this particular area this month and why it might be a viable option to look into. If you do want any more information at all on particular areas in Australia, please let us know. I'd be happy to jump in and do an SDA Unlocked podcast on any specific areas that people are wanting. And look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.